Hello, hi everybody. This is Burke Lyle here. I'm interested in talking about the standings. I want to kind of give a standings update of where we stand on July 27th of who I think is going to win each division, who I think is going to make it to playoffs, who I'm not going to think of the playoffs. So we'll talk about the divisional standings and the wild card standings. This won't be long. I feel like maybe 10 minutes. So in the National League East, you have the Red Sox, who have a 1.5 game lead on the Rays. Yes, the Red Sox won last night. I'll look more into that game against the Blue Jays. Later on, they have a 1.5 game lead on the Rays. So the Red Sox are 62 and 39, Rays 60 and 40. Meanwhile, you have the Yankees, who are 51 and 47, just losing the Red Sox 9.5 back. The Red Sox actually took 3 out of 4 since Thursday. Wild game. Yankees couldn't find the strike zone in that 10th inning. Yankees blew that game 1. I think the Yankees did win game 2, or well, they won game 3. Kind of a come from behind win. And then they blew game 4, so the Yankees could have won 3 out of 4, so instead of 9.5 back, it could be 5.5 back. So at this point in time, it seems like it's going to be between the Red Sox and Rays. The Yankees, I just don't think this is their year. I mean, they're a disappointing team. Blue Jays, 49-47. Yes, they're a 500 team. Lost 2 in a row, including the Red Sox. They're 10.5 back. So I think it's going to come down between the Red Sox and the Rays. In that division, I mean, the Red Sox, in terms of starting pitching, don't really have an ace. I think it's reliable. I think they have a good bullpen and really good offense. Just to say things right there. The Rays, it's interesting. You acquire Nelson Cruz, you trade Rich Hill, you lose Tyler Glasnow. Yet here they are, 60 and 40. Again, once again, one of the better teams in the American League, and very likely a playoff team once again. Yankees, they had that Aaron Judge is out due to the COVID outbreak. You've had a lot of injuries to your starting pitching rotation. Who is their best starting pitcher besides Garrett Cole? That's a good question. I don't think other than Garrett Cole, that's a question mark. The Yankees this year, I have to say they're one of the most disappointing teams in baseball this year, since they're probably going to miss the playoffs unless things really turn around in August. And the reason why I say that is I thought this year they'd go to the World Series. Like, I really did. Since I didn't know if the White Sox were quite ready yet. I didn't know what direction the Astros were necessarily going in, whether they take a step back or not. It seems like they're just as good as they were in years past. Maybe not a 100-win team. They'd have to get hot for 2 months, but there's no reason to think they could win 95 games this year and really go on a redemption tour during the playoffs. So you have the Red Sox, who have a game and a half up on the Rays and the Yankees. Central, you have the White. So Central, now it's time for the White Sox. They just took 2 out of 3 against the Brewers last weekend. They are 59 and 41. They have an 8.5 game lead on the Indians, who are barely 500. The Tigers, believe it or not, who actually are 13 games back, they were once 47 and 51. They lost 4 in a row. So it seems like the Tigers are starting to potentially make progress. In last place in the division is the Twins, who I would say have to be one of the most disappointing teams in baseball this year. Given the fact that they won 100 games 2 years ago, hitting 300 home runs. Last year they won the Central again before losing to the Astros. I think they lost in 2 games. I don't think they've won a playoff game since 2004. So despite their regular season success, they have not had much playoff success. And then to go on and be in last place this year, you wonder how's that going. And if you had to say the talk of the division, I think the Tigers, I'd say, are on the rise. Maybe the Royals, maybe the Twins had a bad year and they go back. Indians, maybe they're in a transition mode. Maybe they'll be a 500 team for a couple of years. Maybe they're trying to transition. Maybe this is a down year for the Indians. They've made it to the playoffs 4 times the last 5 years. The only year they didn't make it is when they won 93 games in 2019. And that's very rare. A team that wins that many games misses the playoffs. So now you have the White Sox. I think they're going to win the division. They have the big 3 starting rotation, Giolito, but really, who's actually way better, is Carlos Rodon and Lance Lynn. That's a really good 2-3 combination. And then you have Dallas Keuchel, I think would be Dylan Cease, who I think would be your 4 starter in a playoff series. So you have 5 reliable starters. I mean, Keuchel's not as good as he was in Houston. But he still, I think, is a reliable starting pitcher for the White Sox. Yes, making a lot of money. Yes, he is making a lot of money. And this is despite the fact that Eloy Jimenez did not play until last night, despite the fact that Luis Robert missed much of the season due to injuries and has just come back, and Nick Madrigal has been out for is out for the year as well with injuries. So this White Sox team, despite all of this, has been shorthanded. They're going to win the division. In fact, I think they're the only team from the division that's actually going to make it to the playoffs. And what the White Sox did, they went through that rebuild, trading Chris Sale. It has worked. That's when they really started that rebuild. So now we go to the National League, the American League West. Yeah, the Astros are 61-40. Did blow that 7-0 lead to the Mariners, as I mentioned in the scoreboard show. Meanwhile, the A's have lost 3 in a row to the Mariners. The Mariners have won 4 in a row, and they're just going into that series. They lost the first game. They're just 4.5 games behind the Mariners, or behind the A's for that wild card spot. The A's could have turned the other way and really just pulled further ahead and really put a dent on the Mariners. But instead, the Mariners won 3 straight against the A's, including a walk-off wild pitch last night. I talked about that game. Dylan Moore, go-ahead grand slam, as they're down 7-0, won 11-8 against the Astros. So the Mariners, all of a sudden, 6 games back in the division, and just one of the A's. And come trade deadline, Mariners should think about buying. Now, granted, they don't need to go all in and trade Jarred Kelenic or Logan Gilbert or pieces like that, or Julio Rodriguez for that matter. I think is playing the Olympics right now with the Dominican Republic. You wonder if you could possibly see him at the end of this year. So you look at where they are right now. Mariners just 6 games back in the division. And granted, this is a Mariners team that's different from 2014, 16, or even 18, where they had good teams, looked to be maybe even wild card teams. But instead of having 7 teams make the playoffs, you had 5. So they kind of fell just short of that. The playoffs in each of the last. So they've had some success. They decided to kind of take a step back and rebuild. Now all of a sudden they are 9 games above 500. And this is a Mariners team that I think is on the rise. And who knows when the Astros will decline. On paper, the Astros are a much better offense. I think they have a better pitching rotation. The Astros are the better team right now. I think they're better than the A's and the Mariners. Would have to study more on the A's. But what I would say is we're used to seeing the Astros as a quality playoff team. And just right now, I think they probably do win the division. I think the Astros would be favorites right now. And then you could say the A's and the Mariners. The Angels, they're 500. I guess that's an improvement, but I don't know. They're kind of like this every year, where they're kind of always kind of right around 500. They've never been bad enough to, get a high draft pick, but they've never been good enough to where they're a playoff team. They're just kind of in the middle. They're kind of mediocre. Every year the Texas Rangers have lost 12 in a row. I mean, they're 35-65. I mean, just a year ago you thought they might be a potential contender in a shortened season. Corey Kluber barely lasted. Breaking news, just got a headline that Ovechkin is just re-signed with the Capitals. The figures of what that would be will be determined later on. So Rangers obviously headed for a potentially, I don't know where they're going. They're ever since they made it to the playoffs the last 4 or 5 years, they've struggled to really put together a good team. Rangers are 25 games back in the division, so they'll be in last place. They'll probably pick first in this upcoming draft. 30 games below 500. I mean, if they play a little below 500 the rest of the year, they'll likely lose 100 games. So that's what it looks like in the American League. In the National League, you have the Mets in first place. Phillies 3.5 back. Braves 5 back. Again, the Braves yesterday entered 5 back, had a chance to win both games, cut it to 3, potentially make this an interesting division race. They can still win their last 3 or even 2 out of 3, and I guess they would make it 4 games. So a small dent, but not a big dent like you would hope for if you're the Braves. So the Mets currently in first place right now, up 3.5 on the Phillies, who won 2 in a row. The Phillies, again, won a game against the Braves yesterday. Braves struggling to score runs. I think they scored 1 run in their last 3 games after scoring 15 the night before. So the Braves playing the Phillies and Mets. I wonder if the Braves will come back. Since I've heard them talk about the Braves throughout the year, they're always a few games below 500. Won a few games, they're at 500. Thinking, okay, they got this now. They're going to get it going. And you know what? The Braves just kind of been 500 throughout the year. I mean, that's what 500 is. Oh, they're 2 games below, or 3 games below. Oh, here they are. They're 1 game under. They'll lose a couple in a row. Okay, they're 3 back. 3, okay. They're 1 through. I mean, just 500 baseball on the Braves. Last 10 games, 5-5. Mets last 10 games, 6-4. Phillies 5-5. So there you go. No one's really taking control of that division, and this is a Mets team without Jacob deGrom for the short term. But we'll talk about the trade deadline later. I might have seen a headline. I'm very sure I did, of potential Max Scherzer talks in there. So the Phillies kind of at 500. That's the thing about this East team is going into the year, I thought that you have 4 teams that have a shot to make it to the playoffs or win the division. I thought the Nationals would make it to the wild card. I thought the Braves would win the division, no question. I thought they could win almost 100 games. That has not happened. In fact, the Braves, if they wanted to win 100 games, and they're not going to, they'd have to play 51 and 11 baseball. No one's ever done that. Not happening. Now, if the Braves get really hot and they have 100 games, they have 62 games, let's say they win 40, then they win 90. So they really have to rush to win 90. That could surpass the Mets in some expectations. So the Braves, I think they're going. So we'll see about the Braves. I mean, you never had Mike Soroka. You had Marcell Ozuna. He has not played since May. We know what happened with Marcell Ozuna. You had, trying to think who else, Ronald Acuna out for the year. Terrible injury. He had 24 home runs. He was on pace. Could have had a 30-30 year. Amazing. Gets hurt. Awful luck. Feel bad for the kid. And then you have the Nationals in 4th place and at 45 and 54, which if you look at that, look at their record, at one point in time, they were, the Nationals were, at one point in time, the Nationals had a, they were, you know what, they played 5-16 baseball in the month of July. I mean, that was right around the time Kyle Schwarber went down. I mean, he was hitting home run after home run. He had, 25 home runs. He had something like 16 home runs in a 3-week span or something. Really helped the Nationals get back into it. I mean, they're right back to where they were, say, right around, 6 weeks ago. I remember 6 weeks, they were 9 games below 500. They got hot at the end of June. And then July, I mean, they just got hot, and they're right back to where they started. I mean, 5-16 baseball. And again, they were, 2-9, I think, going into the second half. After a stretch where you lose to the Dodgers, Padres, Giants, you failed miserably in that stretch, and then you lose the series to the Padres. Sure, maybe you win a series against the Marlins, and then you get swept by the Orioles. And then you lose a game to the Phillies. And again, bullpen losses, blowing leads in the 9th inning, back-to-back 9th inning losses. Sure, they could at least be 5 games below 500 now. Instead, they could be 47-52 instead. But they've lost 5 in a row, 3-7 in the last 10 games. You wonder what it would have been like if that direction was in reverse. So just a disappointing Nationals team. And granted, Max Scherzer, the odds of him being traded have increased. And I'll get more into detail about this later, but I saw some reports of potentially the Nationals trading everyone except Juan Soto. Everyone except Juan Soto. Think about that. So think about this. Everyone except Juan Soto. So the Nationals, as of right now, they're probably going to miss the playoffs. Almost certainly will. They're 11.5 back of the wild card. I mean, forget about the wild card. No one else is getting the wild card except for the teams in the National League West, for that matter, in time. But as of right now, I think who's left in the division is the Braves and the Phillies. I think they each have a chance. Maybe the Mets, but just no team in that division ever got hot. I mean, if the Mets play 500 the rest of the year, they win 85 games. I mean, they're 53 and 45 right now. I mean, 32. 500. So someone's got to get hot in that division. Someone's got to get hot. And again, the trade deadline's upcoming. So by the time the trade deadline surpasses and comes to an end, whenever that might be, whenever the trade deadline passes, if and when it does pass, then we'll see what the division looks like, what it looks like when the trade deadline comes. I'm sorry, my language there was not very good. So now you have the National League Central. The Brewers are 58 and 42, where the Reds are 51 and 49, where the Cardinals are 50 and 50, right? And then the Cubs 51 and 51. So granted, the Reds have kind of fallen backwards. I mean, going into the second half, and then they ultimately got swept by the Brewers. You thought maybe the Reds have a shot. Basically now it's everyone bunched together between Cincinnati, St. Louis, and the Cubs, which going into the year I thought the Cardinals were going to win the division. There's a stretch where the Cubs and Cardinals were kind of both right into it 6 weeks ago. Cubs returned to Wrigley Field, both kind of hot in June. And then all of a sudden, what happens after that is both of those teams fall apart, and then the Brewers kind of take off, which again, the Brewers, yes, they did win 2 out of 3, and yes, they did lose. But they'll be playing the Pirates right now. The Brewers and the Pirates are on their own level. But the Brewers, I think, and I was excited about them going in their series against the White Sox, I think that the Brewers, I think they're going to win the division for sure. In fact, they are. I think they will win the division. And I think with their starting rotation, big three, think about this. You have Woodruff, Burns, Peralta in the playoffs. Game 1, 2, 3. Good luck against that. In a division series where they would likely play against probably the Mets. Who knows what the Mets could look like? They're very aggressive. So they have fun series like that. It's nice. You know what I like is series where you have really good starting pitching. And go a little on the sidetrack. If you want to talk about series of the best starting pitchers, like just rank the playoffs right now. So off the top of my head, Astros, White Sox, yeah, that'll be a pretty good matchup. And yeah, no Verlander, Cole, White Sox, they kind of have their own big three that I talked about earlier. And then you'd have the Mets, DeGrom, Walker, Stroman. I mean, again, I don't think Walker and Stroman, I mean, yes, they're good pitchers, but they're not the same caliber as I'd say as Corbin, Burns. And what I mean is dominant. Like, they don't dominate, they just pitch really well. Good, solid pitchers. Like, just, A, depends on their stuff. B, how they do things. Against Burns and Peralta, and then obviously the Western Division side, the Giants. I mean, I'd have to look at their entire rotation, but they put it together with guys of likes of Anthony DeSclafani, Alex Wood, just Kevin Gossman actually could be a Cy Young contender. So yes, they do have a good starting pitching rotation, but they made it work. So you have those series. So Central, it's going to be the Brewers. Western Division. Well, I've gone on 20 minutes. The Giants have a 2-game lead on the Dodgers, and granted, they're actually playing each other tonight. The Dodgers have a redemption opportunity. And last week, Dodgers had a lead in the ninth inning twice, could have tied the division and then taken the lead. Instead, the Giants won the last two, had a 3-game lead. Then you have the Padres, kind of on their own a little bit. Yes, they've lost 2 in a row. They're 5.5 back, so I think it's going to be between the Giants and the Dodgers in this division, in this race. Padres could still get back in it. I mean, there's still time. So now, and I would say this, I'd say the Giants are the most surprising team in baseball this year on a number of occasions. I mean, I never thought they'd be 62 and 37. I never thought that. I thought maybe they can be I didn't even think they'd be a playoff team. The Dodgers, again with the Dodgers, they have to get hot to win 100 games. But there's no reason to think they can't win, 95, 96 games, whatever. That's all it is. That's without Clayton Kershaw right now, without Trevor Bauer. We'll make our next video we'll go in detail of Trevor Bauer, and we'll speak more on the Trevor Bauer situation in a moment. So the wild card standings right now. So basically, running rapid fire. The East, it's going to come down between the Red Sox and the Rays. The Central, very likely the White Sox. I don't see anyone catching them. I don't think anyone has the talent to catch them. The West, I think it will be the Astros. Maybe the A's or Mariners have a shot. The way the Mariners are playing, they can make things interesting. Now National League, the East, again, I think it's going to be coming down between the Mets, Braves, and Phillies. We'll see how things look, say, over this week, over the next few weeks. I think it's going to be close, and I think it's going to be a bad division. You might have someone win. I don't think anyone's winning 90 in that division. I don't think anyone's talented enough. There's anyone, maybe the Mets can, the Braves, I think are just too short-handed right now. In the Central, it's going to be the Brewers. I mean, yeah, they're at times, it looks like between the Cubs and the Cardinals. Oh, maybe the Reds had a shot. But basically, you have kind of 3 teams, second, fourth place. And you have the Brewers. And again, the Cubs look like they're going into sell mode. Cardinals are just disappointing. Maybe they get hot and turn things around. I mean, again, the Cardinals I thought would be a playoff team this year. I thought they'd win the Central this year. That's who I picked. And then the Reds, I just don't know if they're... Again, yes, they've had a mix of good offense, good pitching, but again, I just don't see them as a playoff team. And then finally after that, you would have the American League West, or National League West. Again, Giants, Dodgers, Padres. I'm a little bit more on the Giants, Dodgers side. They are playing a series this week. Whoever wins that series will likely, it could go either way. The Dodgers could catch and perhaps take the lead or make a dent, or the Giants could just get a little bit further ahead or even pull even further ahead. Maybe have they could have anywhere from a 3 to a 5 game lead, or the Dodgers could have a game lead. So it's going to be interesting how that Western Division shapes out. But Giants-Dodgers is an exciting series at this point in time. So now, wildcard teams, you have the Rays and the A's. They would play each other right now. Mariners, game back. Yankees, 3.5 games back. Blue Jays, 4.5. Then you have the Angels and Indians at 5 games back apiece. So if you expanded the playoffs, the final playoff picture would look like the Mariners and the Yankees with 7, which is what it could look like next year. Which, that's impressive. How the Yankees are still, despite having a down year, are still just 3.5 back of the wild card. They are playing the Rays now. Granted, they're not going to catch the Rays, but this series right here could be interesting to make ground in the wild card game for sure. And then having the Blue Jays as well. So, National League wild card. Giants leading the division, Brewers, Mets, Dodgers, and Padres. The nearest teams are the Reds, 6.5 games back again. Almost certainly not going to win the Central. Phillies, they should be going for the East. Then you have the Cardinals and the Cubs. Braves, 8 games back of the wild card. Again, they should be focusing on trying to win the East. So again, Phillies, Braves trying to win the East. Cardinals, Cubs, again, they're kind of stuck. I mean, they're not going to win the Central. They're also not going to win the wild card. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, think about it. The Padres are 14 games above 500 despite losing 2 games in a row. And despite that, they've actually jumped further ahead of the Reds as we speak currently in this Central Division. So right now, I think the playoffs, if you had to say playoff spots secure, let's talk that. I would say the wild card. In fact, the Mariners are just 1 game behind the A's. The Yankees 3.5. I mean, it is not over yet. It is still close. A lot could happen. Maybe the Blue Jays get hot in the month of August, or the Yankees finally do and surpass someone like the A's. Maybe that does happen and make things interesting. I mean, you could have 3 teams from the East in that wild card spot. You very well could. Where pretty much everything else, I think the divisions are locked up. I think the West is still undecided. A lot can happen. Maybe the Padres get hot in August and they are in first place, right? That could potentially happen. The Reds, I don't know. I mean, they had their opportunities. Does anyone like those 3 teams, Central teams, Cubs, Cardinals, Reds get hot and potentially come closer to catching the Brewers or the wild card? I don't see it. I don't think that's going to happen. Really, it'll be interesting to see whether the Phillies or Braves can somehow get hot and catch the Mets. But basically, if you had to say this, Central and East are only sending 1 team to the playoffs. I think the West is sending 3 teams to the playoffs. Where in the American League, I think this only Central team going to the playoffs is the White Sox. So that was kind of my standings report. Will be interesting to see if it changes or not over the next week. We want to try to do these standings reports about once a week or so, hopefully right around Monday or Tuesday, kind of the beginning of the week or so. Do these standings reports, but that's pretty much everything for now in terms of the standings. In terms of other news, trying to think, we'll talk more about the trade deadline and other news later on.